Hi, this is Todd Danielson, the Editorial Director of Informed Infrastructure. And I'm here at the GeoWeek conference in Denver, and joining me today is the legendary Jack Dangermond, the president and founder of Esri.
I'm nervous, Todd, that you're calling me legendary.
Well,
what kind of a legend is it?
They know what this is about. So let's get started. So you just delivered the keynote address here at GeoWeek. For those unable to attend, can you provide like a quick summary or some of the highlights that you covered?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I'll think of them as we're talking. The first is people in the geospatial world are making footprints all over the planet. They're changing the nature of what's going on. And I talked about something called the geographic approach, which is a kind of framework for bringing geographic knowledge or geographic intelligence into their workflows. And that was a big idea. So some people talk about a digital twin in reference to a GIS. A GIS is building a kind of digital twin of the planet. And they talk in terms of caching all of this information together so that engineers and planners and designers or people that make decisions can have a more informed platform for doing work. One of the big things that's occurring in our field is this notion of living digital twins, where data is brought in from many different sources, IoT, transactions, updating a GIS, the weather, traffic movement. All these geographic phenomena are being wired up and they're being able to be fused into a virtual digital twin. And applications in engineering and design and environmental management and transportation, all of it are being configured in such a way that they can take these streams of living digital twin information off the web as web services and mash it up and then make better decisions. So I think that's what I wanted to get across, both from a technology perspective, but also I think I talked that I want people in this field, whether they are surveyors or remote sensing people or planners or engineers or whoever they are, to realize that they're actually part of a digital ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Maybe some people like to call it a kind of nervous system of the planet. They're all participating, they're measuring things, they're analyzing relationships, they're designing things, they're taking action. And this sort of community of geospatial people with all of these individual players are becoming interconnected and fueled by shared information. You know, in the academy, they're beginning to call this open science, the idea that one scientist does some research and another scientist builds on that research. Okay, they have to have time to publish and get their credits and so forth, but this is kind of a community open science affair. So think about the library of a university. They have all the PhDs of everybody. Imagine that the PhDs were digital maps. So as I'm doing my science, whether it's in archaeology or in biology, I don't really care what it is, sociology, they are sharing layers of understanding that other scientists pick up on and advance science as a kind of holistic enterprise. Okay, that is an interesting metaphor. If we apply that same concept to basically all actors, like geospatial actors, measurers, planners, designers, construction people, they can draw on the science, and as part of this, they're doing transactions on a collective set of information layers, sort of smart layers, that other people can build on. Mm-hmm. So it's like modeling, in fact, the processes of change that are occurring in cities and in farms and in forestry and so on, all as one big enterprise. So GIS is becoming distributed, a kind of platform for open applications or open science in the same way. Do you understand what I'm talking about, Tom?
I think I do. I do my best. So this event kind of bills itself, it's the tagline is the intersection of geospatial and the built world.
Yes.
And how can you describe how Esri might fit into that description? Because it kind of seems similar to kind of your company's direction.
Well, there's many players in this field. In the engineering design, build, construction field, as you know better than me, people that are surveying, remote sensing. What we do is build fundamental GIS tools that bring all of those technologies and all of those data sets that are the outcome of these technologies together into a geographic information system. And those GISs, as we call them, are increasingly becoming infrastructure or enterprise systems within organizations like utilities, or like planning agencies, or like engineering departments in the government side. One of the remarkable things actually that may be interesting to your users is that engineering companies are beginning to embrace this GIS technology for maintaining their work and integrating their work, bringing in outside maps and services dynamically, fusing them to do their own project work. But as a result of this, they're transacting onto databases that many of the government users are doing. So they're building 3D living cities through BIM transactions or other engineering transactions of all types.
Okay, that sounds great. So you talked about the digital twins just in this last keynote, and the last time I interviewed you was November 2019.
Wow.
So it was right before COVID hit, and we talked quite a bit about digital twins, and we'll probably reference that interview when this one comes out. But how would you think since then, November 2019, the technology's changed, the definition of a digital twin has changed in that time?
Well, the definition originally of digital twins was coming out of aircraft and automobile digital twins, so that they can run a digital twin in a wind chamber or so forth and test its viability, whether a plane can fly or so forth. But it was a static digital twin. And I think the big change is that people are constructing reality, both the natural world and the built environment, in dynamic, real-time digital twins. And that means the digital twin is becoming virtual, not a static set of files. It's a virtualized, from many sources, digital twin that's dynamically brought together on view or at the beginning of some analytics or the beginning of some interpretation of the digital twins or application of the digital twins. So that's a big shift, actually. And it's co-evolving with our wiring up of the planet. Everything that moves and changes is, observed, sometimes through imagery, sometimes through other kinds of sensing. And my colleagues in other companies across the whole spectrum, people like Trimble or Leica or other measurement companies, are getting conscious of this, that they want the work that their customers do to be interconnected and made available as services. That's really GIS services of various types. And where we have been distinguished in the field is the idea that we can have technology that fuses all those measurement environments and brings them together so that the participants of geographic information are being fueled by a GIS. And on the, let me say it a different way.
Okay.
Our relationship, and I think last time we were together, we talked about Esri's relationship with Autodesk Corporation. I think that was one of the fueling parts of it. That just gets better and better. And I'm quite shocked, actually, that so many large engineering companies are embracing geography and this living digital twin of geographic information as part of their workflows. And they're definitely doubling down on other aspects of geospatial work in their design, construction, engineering, build work, but they're empowering it with geographic knowledge so that their work gets better. It's more enlightened by bringing together social factors and environmental factors and economic factors as foundational information to be able to do design and engineering and construction. That's a huge thing, actually, Todd. And so on one hand, the technology's fueling more direct work by the very people that read your magazine. On the other hand, the work that they do is getting wired into these government systems so that BIM data sets are becoming a kind of transaction for building 3D integrated cities. So, in a grocery store, we may have talked about this, when you buy something, somebody does a wand on the package with the barcodes and the data model of the store is up to date. So what is the transaction engine for a 3D living city. It's construction. So at the end of a design and build, the submission of one of these data models from BIM can be integrated right into the living twin of a city. And all of a sudden, everybody in the city, the fire people, the planning people, immediately can see, oh yeah, this building was built. And it also pertains to digital submissions, like during the cycle of workflows where a city's reviewing a building, they can bring in a BIM, they can look at the view shed, they can look at the solar impacts, they can see and communicate to their constituents, the government's constituents, what it's going to look like. So this fusion of GIS and engineering workflows and the data sets that are resulting from them is becoming real. And going back to what I was talking about earlier, increasingly this is web services from cloud systems. So the sort of cloudizing of the workflows in design and build and serverizing of those data sets is providing a fusion of information increasingly in real time.
Okay, yeah, so we did talk, it was at Autodesk University in 2019
Yes.
when we talked. And my next question was about what you were talking about the merger of GIS and the AEC worlds, particularly with the BIM technology, which you talked about how that merger is happening. How do you feel that's progressed? Are you pleased with where it is now? And how much further do you think it should and needs to continue?
Well, I'll have a couple things to say about it. First, Autodesk's been really a great partner. We have many partners, as you know, across the industry. And they have continued to open up their data sets for integration of their data sets into GIS, and we in turn integrating the services and map information into their workflows and into their specific products. But we've also been at the same time working with the whole world of open standards. So IFS, these sort of being able to dynamically bring in, particularly this is relevant in Europe, any standards-based BIM models into our GIS desktops or into our servers has been really refreshing and interesting to see. So standards are a kind of big thing for Esri. We have an open platform with open APIs and open architecture that people can extend with bringing our technology into other systems, but also being able to read and accommodate the same thing that we did with Autodesk Corporation for the open world is a big deal for us, both philosophically but also technically. And you asked a different question, which is, how do I measure success? I'd just say at the technical level, that's been good. And teams collaborate. It's hard to have partnerships that are not inside of your own organization, hard for Autodesk and us to work this out, but it has worked, actually. In other ways, measures are in adoption. And what I'm seeing, it's one of the fastest growing areas for Esri, is the adoption of these large AEC and small AEC companies of this geographic approach to expanding and considering all the factors in their practices. And we're talking about really very large companies are embracing GIS, not simply for use in their own workflows, but they're embracing GIS, something surprising me, as a kind of professional practice. So, AEC companies are unique because they know how to do project management. And I don't know if you and I talked about this earlier, but it just is one of the most exciting things for me is that, GIS people, they really know the technology, they know the science, but they often don't have this idea of managing a project, beginning, planning, all of this. And GIS companies really do, AEC companies really have it in their DNA. So it's fueling more involvement. It's expanding the practices of AEC companies, really, to get involved in what has traditionally been a sort of separate activity. And where that really goes is intriguing to me, because it really means that we're linking fundamentally into geography the whole notion that AEC as a set of work practices are involved in creating the future. And the fact that they're embracing it so richly says that we have a chance of creating a more sustainable future, considering all the factors, considering the social factors, considering the economic factors, considering the engineering factors, and considering environmental factors. bringing it all together using geography as a framework. That excites me a lot.
Okay. So these people that are kind of on this cutting edge of this integration, we talked about what they're doing now. Besides the getting project management more involved, are there any other things that they should be looking about doing in the future and then kind of the next steps?
Well, increasingly, AEC firms are hiring GIS people that come from outside of their world. Maybe that's one of the dynamics of what you're asking, and that sort of interdisciplinary, disciplinary workflow is the outcome. It's a kind of co-evolving. The technology evolves, like connecting engineering workflows to science workflows and GIS workflows, and then all of a sudden the methods that they use change. And as the methods change, technology evolves to support those new methods. And so there's kind of a co-evolution between tech and applications, or workflows is a really neat thing to me. There's a great scientist that once said, for every new advance in science, there's an advance in method, and that methods in science are co-evolving. Exactly the same thing is happening here from these heretofore sort of separate disciplines, and so these two worlds are coming together, and the outcome, I think, is a more sustainable set of workflows, in the way things are done.
Okay, so speaking a little bit about tech and maybe some current news, Esri just introduced ArcGIS Reality, and I saw some demos here, and it seems like a pretty big deal. Can you tell me a little bit about this new product, why it was developed, and who is the intended audience?
Yeah, actually it was developed in Stuttgart, in sort of the home of digital photogrammetry for many years, and a group of students there left the university and started this company a number of years ago, and they invented some of the best technology to be able to take imagery of all types, aerial imagery, drone imagery, now satellite imagery, and process it in such a way that they can create very accurate digital products that can support the world, basically, from accurate photogrammetrically derived base maps, orthophotos, true ortho, digital terrain models, extracted from the imagery, all automatically. And also these 3D point clouds, I like to call them 3D pictures. And do it at scale. So like doing all of Holland, or doing massive parts of England, or doing, this technology was interesting to us as a standalone engine. So when we acquired them, the job was to look at how do we bring that kind of a technique and set of technologies right into what traditional GIS users have been doing. So think about automating the link between imaging and creating GIS products directly. So this reality capture technology, heretofore called SURE, and there were hundreds of users of it in the mapping world, is now been refactored, re-engineered right into ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Enterprise support, so that people can begin to do this reality capture and use the outputs directly. So those of you who understand what I'm talking about will really understand that is an automation linkage between imaging, whether it's from a drone or from aircraft or ultimately satellites, right into information products that update and change the digital twin of reality. Wow, that's really cool. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, as you can imagine. And our colleagues in other companies are also using this engine as extensions for their digital cameras because it's so efficient and very fast. The technology is not unique. There is other reality capture technologies in the marketplace. But what I think distinguishes this is, it's really good, actually. I would say I'm not the right one to describe all the detailed attributes, except that it completely automates the process and results in products that are directly usable. And it's scalable. Taking a whole country and creating these things, that's unheard of. Doing it in a cloud with Kubernetes-based processing engine, that's really scalable. So my thought is imagery coming from satellites, say, that get automatically processed into these directly usable products at scale for whole nations or whole regions. This is very cool, and I think it's going to transform the mapping business. It'll transform the way people act.
Okay, I did think it was a big deal. So let me see if I understand this. These were built on the ArcGIS Reality Engine, and it sounds like that's an in-house product?
Well, it was a separate set of technologies that were developed by these people in Stuttgart. I think there's about 35 people there that are the developers of this. When we acquired it, we asked them really to step back and rethink and refactor the technology so it not only was a standalone engine, but also became integrated in with our standard products. So it, I'm very pleased to announce that this month we are shipping in volume as a standard extension to ArcGIS this technology. And that'll make it increasingly available, kind of democratizing digital photogrammetry.
Okay, and typically when I hear the word engine, it's gaming engines, like the Unreal gaming engine. Is this similar to that, or is it different?
An engine can be a library of functionality. And we have ArcGIS engine. It's one of the underlying components that run ArcGIS. Actually, it's components. And so the Sure engine was a library of components, well engineered, that really would scale. So we basically, again, I'm repeating myself, but took that engine and had them refactor it as an extension to ArcGIS itself. So it's both an engine that can be used by mapping companies of all sorts to generate products, or it can be just simply an extension to ArcGIS. And by the way, we also refactored that engine to be a plug-in for all of our drone products. So you can actually fly a drone, buy one of our products at a couple thousand dollars, and suddenly we have democratized reality capture processing in a little drone. So I can fly my drone, create a 3D point cloud, and create all of these really great directly usable information products from that kind of operation. That, again, I'm repeating myself, sort of democratizes digital photogrammetry. Puts it in the hands of people doing projects. You know, I have a construction project. Okay, let's get one of these drone systems, and it has reality capture in it, so I can fly it once in a while and create terrain models and do cut and fill analysis and make contours and report performance of my construction crews. All of that for nothing, actually. Not nothing, but it's very cheap compared to what we have traditionally had to do from a workflow perspective.
Okay, great. And so this can be another evolution in making digital twins better, kind of like how the gaming engines made the interaction of people to make it real and move around in them. This can speed the process and be the next part of the improvement?
This is all about building strong GIS databases that are digital twins of reality. Gaming engines are visualization applications, and you may be leading up to this, but over the last 2 years we've worked with the two leading game engine technologies, Unreal and the other one, to build geographic referencing into their engines. And so that was a first step, so that in the game engines themselves, they can now read GIS data directly into this gaming environment. They could cache it, or they can just read it in. And so the game engines represent a kind of immersive technology environment where people can fly around and do viz sim operations, including physics models. So we have been working for years on trying to figure out how to do that. I think this last year we've been releasing these little plugins to the game engines that allow them to access GIS data. So this is going to broaden the use of GIS data, so people that are running these digital twin data sets can simply have new opportunities for viewing it, seeing it, playing games in real reality, as opposed to these sort of artificial environments that game companies have shipped with their data sets and games in the past. So I think that's a breakthrough. It'll expand for our customers this viz sim application, but it'll also, I think, it has other implications for people who like to build games.
Right, for sure. So one other topic from our last interview that I wanted to bring back was talking about the people, because it's really all about the people, right? We talked about the needed collaboration between people in the GIS worlds and the AEC industries. So how must that collaboration between the people continue to everyone's benefit?
Well, look, I think people are people, and they learn skills and professions around architecture and engineering and design and construction. Now those people are learning new capabilities and understandings about using geographic knowledge to amplify and enhance the way that they do things in engineering. My background is landscape architecture background and urban designer, and I think as a designer. So am I a designer? Am I a landscape architect? Am I a GIS? No, I don't want to think that way. I want to think about I'm empowering practices of design with geographic knowledge. That's the ultimate fusion. So sometimes these segmentations of I'm a this and I'm a that get in the way. So the basic concept of geography is looking at things holistically, bringing it all together, being able to integrate all the information layers into layers of understanding that can support applications of many types. So I'm thinking that as the profession of engineering and designing and planning and construction evolve, it'll increasingly involve context for the design work. Some people are beginning to call that geodesign as a way to bring science into the workflows of design. That's maybe a way to think of it. In other words, I'm testing alternative designs and quickly evaluating based on science overlays the impact of that design. An example, I want to design a new town. Is this the right location or is that the right location? I want to build a new building. Is this the right location or is that the right location? That requires context. You know, some of my customers like Starbucks are, locating their stores using geography as a foundation. They're minimizing this and they're maximizing that. And these are all layers of understanding that are driving their work. Same with Walgreens, same with Walmart, same with Chick-fil-A, same with, hundreds of retailers in the action business. And who does the work for them? It's engineers and designers and planners that are increasingly empowered with geographic intelligence. So it's natural that this would occur instead of doing design and then doing an environmental impact statement to see if it's okay. No, let's bring all of that information in the first place. Bring in issues about social equity and bring in issues about environmental impact right into the design efforts that people carry out. That to me is empowering the disciplines, not keeping this separate disciplines. It's enlarging the workflows, and I think if we're gonna survive as a human species, this has to happen actually, so that we are, in other words, designing for a sustainable future, not being at the effect of, those guys over there did it to us, or these engineers. No. We have to all buy into this notion of holistic approaches to the way that we create the future, designing a future, creating a future that's sustainable and that we really believe in.
Okay, and that leads to I think kind of my final question is that I've been watching you do this for more than 20 years now.
Yes.
The conferences, the keynotes, the talking with people like me, and hundreds at least more, and you've been doing it for a long time. What drives you to keep doing this, to keep going, to have so much passion? Like, is it saving the world? Is it what motivates you to keep up this amount of energy still going?
Interesting question, actually. I was very lucky because in university I found something that really got me excited. This idea of integrating everything using geography as a common science. And as a designer and a landscape architect or urban planner, this just thrilled me because I could see actually how what my life was going to be like could actually matter. And people hunt for purpose in life. I found it as a kid, luckily. So it, to me doesn't seem awkward. I like, and I think most people like to have a purposeful life, and they do it in their family, or they do it in their job, or they do it in their, being a person of faith, or whatever it is, they find it in their NGOs, in their personal life, in their professional life. I just lucked out because I found something that I really like. And wow, once I got it, I realized that it's got to be moved along. So the idea of connecting innovation and science to the way that people actually behave, that just turns me on. So my wife and I remember it, and we were still at Harvard, had this Saturday afternoon conversation where we said, well, what should we do? Should we be, this was, in the late 60s, should we be protesting, or should we be rebels, or let's just lead a life which integrates rational thinking and science into the way people behave. And that was a big deal at that time. I mean, Silent Spring was occurring, Rachel Carson. These were major influences on our life, but then we said, maybe we could play in this space, but not being radical, but just systematically bring systems thinking and rational thinking to the way the world gets created. And that still is really exciting to me. I could see my own life mattering. And when I talk to young people, they want to do that. They want some of that. They want to, and we also want to, all of us seem to want to have purpose in our life, right? I mean, I'm sure you do in your life. And so once you find ways that you can actually do it, there's no sleeping. I mean, there really isn't. So I work like crazy. I suppose you'd say, well, you don't need to do that. You've got this, and it doesn't matter to me. And people that I've really met that really matter, people like Ed Wilson or, lots, actually, they find a passion in their life. And then there's, fine, great, it's like living. Mm-hmm. I'm alive. So why check out, or why go dull, or it's not meaningful anymore.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you found your thing and you made a big difference in the world and a lot of people's lives. So just want to end with that. And,
well, Todd, you are making a difference by being able to try to figure out and listen and understand and project this information from the people you listen to outwards, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you must see that, or you wouldn't keep doing it. It's just the way if you really get in touch with it, what you're actually doing, see the context, not the content, not the interview stuff. You see how you're making a difference. There's no sleeping, actually. You want to go for some of that. And in all of my interactions with people of all types, in all countries and all cultures, it's all about the same. When people really see that they could make a difference with their life, then they search out what that is.
All right, thanks, Jack. See, legendary. All right, thanks again one last time.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time. Appreciate you taking some moments to
Yeah.
share with our audience.
Sure. Yeah, find that thing.